Hey everybody, welcome to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson and I am here with the Honorable, because once you're elected to a public office, you hold that title, I believe, for the rest of your life in North Carolina.
For the rest of the life, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
so-
Hope that's a long time.
Yes, very long time. The Honorable Senator Richard Burr. I'm honored that you would do this. Just thanks for being here, because I think it's great for people to learn about your love of Winston-Salem. Now, granted, you have a whole state that you represent, and a whole country in a lot of aspects, but in this particular case, I kind of want to focus on, Winston-Salem and some different things I've learned about you that I didn't know, and I know you're scared because I'll ask crazy any questions, and before I go any further, so this is Brooke Burr's husband, Richard.
Right.
So there, is that,
that sets the stage.
18 months, right?
That's right.
Is that how long it is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
18.
it's shorter than that. Maybe it's 14 now.
14 months to be. Oh, that's Brooke's husband, Richard.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're excited about that.
I am excited.
So I want to talk about that because there's a whole bunch of things. But let's start off how we're supposed to, and that's ask the first question is where are you from and how long have you been in Winston-Salem?
Well, I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia, and my dad was a Presbyterian minister. He started when he left the Second World War. He went to seminary and ended up being the chaplain at UVA and actually lived on the lawn, which for a Virginia student is the biggest honor that you can have.
The buildings out front.
The buildings, yeah, right there.
I mean,
along
that
the
they
lawn.
put wood out for you and everything like that. That is the place to live. There's what, like 12 of them or something like
I
that?
think there's 17.
Yeah.
But,
okay, I know exactly where that is.
So
wow.
he started there, and then he became the pastor at the Presbyterian Church in downtown Charlottesville and then Norfolk. But we've been in Winston-Salem now. This is my 59th year.
59th year. You moved here. How old were you when you moved here?
I was just turning 7.
Just turning 7. So, all right. We'll come back to some of this stuff. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
so,
I'm on Medicare.
Yeah. Are you an AR? No. So then, all right. So after that, the second question I'm going to ask you is, and this is, a political statement here. What's your favorite place to eat? And you can take the mayor's route, which is, every restaurant's great. However, here's some that I've been to recently, or where do you like to eat around town?
The last place I ate was the best.
Okay, and that's I'm assuming at home.
No. Listen, Winston-Salem is just a wonderful place,
right,
for dining, and it really doesn't matter whether you want to go fancy or whether you just want casual. Winston's got everything. And I think most of us who have lived here a long time, we tend to go back to the places that have been here for a long time.
Where you feel like home.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we like comfort food.
Okay. Yeah. So on last episode, I talked to Adam Andrews, and of course he announced that he's going to be opening up a new restaurant in the Crafted. I don't know if you'd heard that yet.
No.
And so there's going to be, so he had the Young Cardinal, he had the Dogwood Hops and Crops, and now this one's going to be a pine theme, for North Carolina. So interesting that, we got closures and stuff. Now we've got him with Jeffrey Adams. We've got him with, the breakfast place, which is Young Cardinal, of course, the bar, and then now another restaurant going in downtown. So I think that's one of the other great things about our town is we do have a lot of options that would make people think we're larger than we are.
Yeah, we do. And downtown has been a tremendous attraction for the recruitment of the next generation. Downtown is not necessarily a place for seniors to necessarily go and spend the evening, though there's entertainment for all, and I think that's the beauty of it. But there's no question that the transformation of downtown has done what we probably couldn't have done just by married couples alone. We have doubled the size of the next generation in this town.
And that's one of the things we touched on last week was, with Adam is how just the Stevens Center right next to Jeffrey Adams, that's a huge draw for him. And until they start bringing people back in, then, he may not have the upstairs open because that's another 7 or 8 people. We have the downstairs open. And, we've talked to many restaurateurs and things like that, and they're just trying to get through this. So it is interesting, but I'm sure glad that we have what we have in Winston and it continues to grow.
No question.
What do you guys like to do? I know you and Brooke travel some. But I mean, what do you guys like to do? Now, do both boys live here in town, or?
We've got one here and we've got one in Richmond.
Okay.
And we spend as much time with them and grandchildren as we possibly can. But you know, Brooke and I have gotten to that point where we just enjoy being home. We've lived apart for 28 years.
Yeah.
So it's COVID was a new adventure to actually be together for, I think, 5 weeks. And we learned we can live in retirement together, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, right now there's a little bit more of a penalty if she hurts you. Since you're a senator, but I mean, I would be worried come 14, 15 months.
She's protected better than I am.
It has been interesting to me, you know, to talk to her as well too, and learn, you know, some of the background of you running and her thoughts on it and different things like that. And we'll get into that. But so just hanging out around the house has been your big thing?
It is, and I think it's safe to say that this is now an opportunity for me to get reacquainted with some of my friends I grew up with who are still here. Because I've seldom have I been home longer than 7 days.
And this last time, and this is how I was, you know, we were able to get you on is, I mean, you've been home for about 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. Which was a real treat.
And it's getting ready to end, and I knew that, so that was why I'm like, could you please come over, please? And you were nice enough to come over and do this today. Now, let's go back. So you've moved to Winston-Salem. I'm at least going to take you to high school. So you go to Reynolds.
Went to Reynolds.
What are some thoughts about
Remember
Reynolds?
that when I left middle school,
right,
is when the school system in Forsyth County went to 11 and 12 as high school.
So I was the last class of it the other way.
And so I went to Paisley.
Right.
For 10th grade, and then Reynolds for 11th and 12th.
Right. Where'd you go for 9th? Was it Paisley as well?
9th was Wiley.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I did Clemens, which was 4 years, in the old Edgar B. Then went to Brown, which is no longer around, to Southwest, which is now a grade school, and then went to McGinnis for the 4 years because Mom wanted me to go to 4-year high school. I would have gone to Kennedy and then out to, I probably would have gone to Reynolds.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of, you know, moving around and things
But
like that.
my graduating class was 962, if I remember correctly.
Holy cow.
So you can see the magnitude of what that consolidation of people into the 11th and 12th schools.
So obviously Reagan wasn't around then. No. Was West around?
West, Parkland, North.
Was East there yet?
East, I think it just opened.
Yeah, okay, wow. So you played football?
I did.
Defensive back?
Well, I was defensive back at Wake Forest. I was actually the tailback in a single wing at Reynolds.
That's where the running back comes from, because my source that I talked to a little bit about your playing time earlier today thought that you were a running back, and I said, no, he was a defensive back, so you were a running back.
I was a tailback in a single wing, and that was really the result of losing our quarterback and transforming the entire offense in 10 days, and the fastest guy on the team became the tailback, and that was me.
Wow. And so then you were recruited to Wake by Mills, I would assume?
Yeah.
And then you were on the team, or you had graduated by the time Makovic came around?
I had 1 year of eligibility left, but I was a senior. And when John came in as coach, I sat down with him and said, I'm happy to give you the scholarship if you'd like to have that, or stay the 5th year. And he's very politely, he looked at me and he said, would you give me a week to look at the system and see what we've got? And a week later, he called me in. He said, if the offer's good, I'll take the scholarship.
Okay.
And I said, hey, I'm out of here.
All right. Yeah. I mean, and you know, how weird is it now? So, you know, obviously we've talked, and I'm an Appalachian fan. You know, our current quarterback is a grad student, Bryce, who was at Duke, and then before that was, you know, backing up Trevor Lawrence. And so it's the whole scheme of things, of people jumping and all that kind of stuff. None of that was around when you played. You went to school.
No, and it's been exacerbated because COVID eliminated the 1 year sit out. So those that transferred this year did it without the mandatory 12 months without playing. question whether that's ever going to come back in. We're seeing a total realignment of college sports. The debate over name, image, and likeness is probably the most damaging thing to college sports that I think could happen. And I think the real loser out of this, even though people are really engaged on both sides for and against this, the real loser is going to be women's sports. And if they're not careful, we're going to see an elimination of women's sports at the college level.
It is frustrating because, you know, at Appalachian they had to basically, you know, what is it? It's Title IX. They have to readjust and stuff. So they lost men's soccer because they lost a ladies' sport. And I just hate that. But, you know, with the driving force in most universities being football, it bothers me that we still, you know, for instance, when we saw some of the Olympic stuff and things like that, where they're sending up pictures of, you know, the men's gym compared to the ladies' gym, it is really frustrating. And it's going to be interesting how all that shakes out because, you know, I just wish that all sports could be, you know, on an equal field, but I just don't think they're ever going to be.
Well, they're not going to be, and as you see the consolidation of SEC in 5 years, it'll probably be 40 teams in the SEC, whether the ACC and the Big Ten and Pac-12, this new affiliation that they've got, whether they remain separate conferences or whether they merge into one conference, it means that you're going to have two entities that control all the TV contracts of the future. There may not be room for an Appalachian State or for, you know, name the school.
Right.
Might not have been room for Wake Forest if the ACC wasn't putting together a package. So this is alarming because many alumni are going to see sports drastically change at their universities, and it will ultimately affect female sports.
Yeah, it is strange how much it has changed. You know, as you know, we would get transfers from Division I-A in a sense down to Division I-AA because they didn't have to sit out if they didn't want to play anymore. Like when Makovic came in, you could have transferred to Appalachian and still been eligible without having to do the mandatory one-year sit out. But it is interesting to hear your perspective on that. Because you know, whenever I've talked to you about things, it seems that you're not only bringing in what you love about sports and stuff, but you're also bringing in all the other information out there as you talk to other people.
I got $15 a month laundry money and $65 a quarter book money.
Right.
That was what we received as scholarship athletes. Today, at most schools, they receive $1,000 cash a month. The NCAA allows the schools to pay for these kids to go home for hardships, to fly them, to do whatever. There is no hardship. We've gotten away from understanding that a scholarship is an opportunity to get a free education. And I say this to all those professional athletes that have gone out and said, I was cheated when I wasn't paid for my name or my image or my likeness. And how was Julius Peppers cheated? He made millions of dollars in pro football. He enabled scholarships to be given out, non-athletic scholarships on the academic side, because of the money that Chapel Hill was able to make off jersey sales and things like this. So where were these professional athletes cheated in any way?
Right.
And if they're not potential professional athletes, then they're not going to get any money for name, image, and likeness.
Right.
Some have to wait for the payoff that they're going to get.
Yeah, it's a quandary. And I think that, I don't know where I sit on that issue because I also feel that, you know, as you said, I mean, you are getting an education and then we hear about how much, you know, debt there is out there. You know, so, you know, if I go and I go to school to be a doctor, you know, I may have all these, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that I've just got to work to pay off. Whereas in, you know, as you're saying with the athletes, they're getting that paid for.
The average undergraduate college debt today is about $26,000. Where you see the big numbers are when people go to graduate school and when they go multiple times.
Right. Yep.
And you know, the question is, what should the American taxpayer be willing to subsidize because we subsidize under the student loan program.
Right.
What should we be willing to sacrifice? How many years of education? How many different degrees? I think by allowing us to participate in the 4 years of undergraduate, that's probably sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you're talking to somebody that, you know, I was fortunate my folks paid for me to go to Appalachian, which was cheaper than when I went to high school, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
But my wife, of course, now she paid her own way, worked everything, did all these things, and then when I met her, she still had some college debt that we were able to pay off. But, you know, it's kind of interesting, as you said, you know, if you've gone for 25 years to college, how much of that should be expected to help? Yeah. So we're going to come back to a whole bunch of little things, but you know, the next thing now is you're selling lawn equipment after college.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So and you know, so I wanted to get us there, and then we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and start talking about this because you ran for something eventually, I guess. Yeah. All right. We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm here with the Honorable Senator Richard Burr. And talking off mic, I forgot to tell you this. The reason why I knew about the Wake Forest stuff is because I have a couple friends that, you know, played there. I did not talk to this person, but when you said defensive back, my ears perked up. Landon King was a friend of my brother's. I don't know if you knew Landon.
Didn't.
The way that you'll know Landon is he's the one that intercepted with a broken hand against Carolina in the 1979 season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then they of course went. I went to the Tangerine Bowl. You know, huge Wake Forest fan before, you know, I got educated and, you know, went to Appalachian. You know, prior to that, I was ASS when App played Wake. But
I've never heard educated and Appalachian in the same sentence.
It's
but,
okay, yeah. So yeah, we'll make sure and put that on the blogs there. But no, I mean it's and what a great rivalry that is. I've been on the sideline for the last time we played in Winston, and just. Two great schools, two great programs, and I know you love Wake. And you, so after you graduated from Wake, obviously, I was going to ask you, are some of the stories about being the son of a preacher or the daughter of a preacher? Were you
all
wild
true,
and crazy?
All true.
Okay,
All true.
so what did you do after you went to Wake?
You know, I was fortunate enough that I had a owner of a business here in town who allowed me to work in the summers repairing lawnmowers.
Okay.
Because I could start early in the morning, I could finish mid-afternoon, I could get in the workout that I needed during the summer to get ready for football. And when I got through with Wake Forest and was ready to graduate, he said, "Come to work for us." And I ended up doing that. I started as a salesman with the lawn and garden equipment, ended up becoming the sales manager for the Amana Appliance division, and it was incredibly educational. And I think that you know, anybody that does sales for a living, you have this ability to learn as much as you want to through that process. The world's changing though, and maybe Amazon's going to reshape what things look like.
Until something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's amazing to me is, you know, I've been talking to different people. I have some clients that work at Inmar and stuff, and of course they're downsizing their main facility, going to a smaller headquarters and things like that. And then my neighbor works for one of the banks, and you know they're putting pods across America that, you know, you have to be able to come in and work there like once a week. You know, so there's a pod in Winston-Salem, so you know, as long as you can drive in, so once a week you got to drive in and, you know, be in the office. It is interesting how our lives, our communities, etc., which I don't think that's going to hurt Winston. It's like, oh, okay, so I only have to come in once a week, and I can live in Winston and then drive in and put up with the big city of Charlotte's, you know, stuff for one day, and then I'm back with my family for another. You know, can I do it that I come 2 days every 2 weeks or something? So I think that may actually help us because, you know, we've always been kind of, centered around certain industries. But if we're able to then travel some, I mean, what are you seeing on the national level with telecommuting and stuff like that?
You know, we're still in COVID.
Right.
So it's impossible to look at that crystal ball and say, here's what it looks like and here's the timeline. But there's no question that COVID has redesigned the architecture of the workplace. Many businesses found out, geez, I don't need people on the road 6 days a week. You can do a lot of this on Zoom. You can WebEx. You can function in the same capacity a different way. So I fear that Doug Parker's belief that American Airlines is going to be reinflated because the business traveler is going to go back. I'm not sure that it's going to happen.
Right.
But I also believe that there's going to be more air travel by the vacationer.
Right.
Because what we've seen is people who were locked into the cities or the states that they lived in, and COVID opened up and they fled from New England and they came here, they're coming back. They're loving the fact that they found more. Nobody knows what the international landscape's going to look like. How long is it going to take? With the current production capacity, it's probably going to take 4 years to vaccinate the world on COVID.
So did I see something like Spanish flu? It took like 4 years for it to kind of work its way through the system.
Pretty much, and you know, the question is, does COVID eventually burn itself out like the Spanish flu did, or does this keep remaking itself from a standpoint of Delta to Mu to something else?
I think there's what's the lambdas? I guess is a new one out there. So and I know you know all the Greek letters. I know that. All right, so. How in the heck do you run for Congress against an incumbent that, I think was doing an okay job, I guess, according to the people here? I mean, do they come knock on your door one night and go, hey, Richard, you should do that?
No.
How does that happen?
I was driving a second and third grader to school, listening to NPR. George H. Bush had gone to Andrews Air Force Base the day before, cut a deal with Tip O'Neill to shore up Medicare by raising taxes.
Right.
If you remember his campaign pledge,
no new taxes. That's it.
That infuriated me enough that I dropped my kids off at school, drove home, drove up the driveway, looked at my wife, said, I'm going to run for Congress, got back in the car, never mentioned a word to her for another 4 months. And 4 months later, I signed up.
Right.
Sometimes you're inspired by things that happen, and my mother always taught me there's a time to complain, and when the time to complain is up, you either shut up or sign up.
You're either on the table or at the table.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'd prefer to be at the table.
Yeah.
So you run, and you lose the first time.
I did.
And then you run the next time. Neil's decided he's not going to run, and of course landslide is what they say. You did pretty good, and that was in 1994. Yeah. Right. Interesting now with a lot of the stuff going on. Fast forward just a little bit, but I also want to talk to you about some other things before then. But with all the stuff going on, you did a lot of stuff about bio warfare right after 9/11. You were big on, hey, let's prevent some of this stuff. Let's sign some agreements. Let's do some different things. And
all the statutes that are in place right now,
right?
All the things that guided the Trump administration on vaccine production, on how we respond to a pandemic, is all legislation that I wrote in 2001, 2002, 2003. It's been updated every 5 years. We go through reauthorizations, and we've made what we thought were the appropriate changes. And I'm in the process now of taking a look at an after-action review of COVID its first year, getting ready to rewrite the legislation, hopefully with the chair of the Help Committee, Patty Murray from Washington. Bipartisanship is alive and well. You can't do these types of things without it. And most of the original legislation I wrote with Ted Kennedy.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So when we roll back to getting elected, what's your first week like? That was quite interesting to be.
Well, it was 100 days. It wasn't a week.
That's right. That was when O'Neill was doing the 100. Newt was doing the 100 days.
It was 100 days. So Brooke and I didn't see each other for a long time, and we were going sometimes 18, 20 hours a day. Before we ever knew where the bathrooms were, and before we'd really gotten up and running. Imagine that a campaign's like starting a business and then shutting a business down, and you do it in less than 6 months. It was either successful or it wasn't.
Right.
And hopefully you learned something from it. Being a member of Congress, there's not a book that you read and it says, here's what you do.
Right.
So you've got to go in and you've got to staff up. You've got to figure out where your priorities are. You've got to make sure that you've got a team that has the talents that fill the gaps. It's a little easier in the Senate because of the size of the staff than it was in the House. But you work within a capped budget, and that dictates what you pay people, and it dictates how often you travel, that type of thing.
So you're hired. So basically, you're hired by the people. You go up to Washington D.C. You have, as a congressman, do you have what, one or two local offices?
Well, you can have whatever you need within your budget.
Right. Okay.
And
So I mean, obviously, Winston-Salem was one of them, and then
we really in the House typically only had one.
Right.
And we would have some people that would go out. But House districts they're configured for roughly 600,000 people.
Okay.
And they balloon up as you get closer to the 10-year census. But my original district stretched from north of Durham on the Virginia line to just slightly west of Marion, North Carolina, Glen Alpine.
Right.
So we used to call it the lottery district because it ran all along the Virginia border, but I had no towns.
Right.
And where I lived was in it, but downtown Winston-Salem was not.
Right. And that was 5th District?
That was 5th District.
Right. And then, of course, then 10th came in, right? And that's when Ballinger...
Well, Ballinger had part of Winston-Salem when it was redistricted. Ted Budd and Mark Walker have had it at some point. I'm not even sure if, I don't know if Virginia Fox has any of Winston-Salem anymore.
Yeah, I don't think she does. Yeah. So you so you go up there, you got your AALA, all these different things. You're in your office. A lot of people don't see that. I mean, housing's not provided, so you got a hot bunk with 2 or 3 different people. I mean, you may have, 3 congressmen from North Carolina may rent a place together, or hotels, all that kind of stuff. Where and that's a lot of that happens at the State House. It's like as I talk to the people there, it's because that is a part-time job. Obviously,
yeah. The difference is the State House, they get a daily per diem.
Right.
And in Congress, we got 0. We got no per diem whatsoever.
So then, how do you? I mean, obviously you get up there. You're, I'm sure from your district at that point. I mean, tobacco was huge, and then different things from guns to whatever. I mean, all those things were things that were important to that district. And I mean, when you get up there, how do you handle representing your district as an elected official?
You make sure that you have an open door policy. You hear both sides of every issue, and you make a determination based upon the pitch that you've heard and the education that you've had an opportunity to get your entire life. My district was tobacco. It was medicine. There's no secret as to why I received a lot of contributions from tobacco companies and from people in the medical fields. They make up a majority of the people that I represented. So we're blessed in North Carolina that we probably have as big a petri dish of the mix of sectors that you can find across the country. They're all here. And that's why as we shift from a manufacturing state, which I think you alluded to earlier, to biotechnology, and the list goes on and on and on. We may be the next recipient of an investment by Intel to produce chips in North Carolina.
Intel, then we got Apple
Honeywell.
doing their thing.
Honeywell just moved their headquarters to Charlotte. Apple, $1 billion investment. If Intel comes through, it's $20 billion. So Merck just doubled the size of their vaccine production facility north of Durham. One of the largest manufacturers in the world just bought a North Carolina company. Now they've got a presence here. It's really exciting, but it's all about innovation. It's about technology. It's about our state's ability to transform itself into a 21st century state. And we've done that because of tremendous higher education here. And I think that's the thing that we forget about sometimes. We have roughly 78 institutions of higher education. We can annually fill every job need that's coming in with graduates of higher education. We don't have to recruit to do it. We're one of the only states in the country that can make that claim.
Really?
But higher education is not the thing we lead with when we're trying to sell somebody, unless it's me leading.
Right. Yeah, because I know, you know, for a while, Winston, it was like, hey, we've got a space that you can go into. Now, of course, you know, I think they've done a pretty good job. I hate that we lost the bank, but I also believe that maybe the incubator or the smaller companies is better for us overall, more stability for the community and things like that. But then, you know, the other thing is when we got Amazon in Kernersville, we got, you know, big FedEx in Kernersville, we got, you know, the new VA stuff. I mean, there's all these things are coming. And, you know, as a North Carolinian now, I wasn't born here. Of course, I was born a little bit north of here, as where you like to go. And so, you know, it's amazing to me. It's like a child, and they're just growing up and just making you so proud. I mean, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, I continue to be impressed with where we're going, especially with some of the new stuff, like, you know, with Apple coming in and stuff. People are realizing what we've known all along.
Yeah, and North Carolina is 1, 2, or 3 on everybody's list. Everybody who's talking about investment, North Carolina's on their list. We've got to get better at closing the deal. But listen, we've got a lot of competition with Georgia, with Texas. But as I like to say, it doesn't take you but 1 year in those locations to say, God, why didn't we do it in North Carolina? So the next one shouldn't make the same mistake.
Yeah, it is interesting. Now, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and start to talk about more of the issues of you know, getting elected to Senate and what's that like, and then kind of go through some other things that you've had to deal with throughout your career. I don't know if we'll be able to tell what the title of the book would be if it's written, but we'll get to that. We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson. I'm here with Senator Richard Burr, the Honorable Senator Richard Burr, and we've been talking about all kinds of different things. And I think as a lover of politics, I mean, I was a congressional intern. I told you about that.
Yep.
Yeah, you've seen one of those before. Yes, we brought that in here for you. I think that's Jesse flew that over the Capitol for my dad. But you know, as a lover of this and cool things like when Stabler was talking about his brother, I mean, you know, I used to have the ID, he could ride underneath in the subway and all that stuff. I mean, do you ever just sit back before we get on to the Senate? Do you ever just sit back and go, how the heck did I get here? You know, when you were, you know, did you ever take the time to appreciate that, or were you just working so hard all the time? And
I had advice from Howard Coble, who was 6th District Congressman, great guy. And Howard said early on to me, he said, if you ever fly in here at night and you see the Capitol lit up and you don't get goosebumps, it's time to leave. I still get goosebumps, but after 28 years, I've about exhausted all the good ideas I've got.
Right.
And
I think you still got 1 or 2 left. I know that there's something left there.
So my point is this: that I still love where I work.
Right.
But for those that look at it and say must be really cool, well, it's my office.
Right.
So I get over the goosebumps of flying in because then I go to work.
Right.
And I look forward most to that flight home. People say, what's the most exciting thing of your week? I said, flying home.
Right.
Coming back to this town.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you know, I told you, I mean, I know you said, John, ask anything you want to. I'm going to answer it. I mean, we'll touch on some subjects, but I mean, I'm not here to be, you know, a judge or jury on anything for any person that I ever interview. What I love about you is you love where I live, and you care about here. And if people have issue with you, and that's probably, let's touch on that. People have had issues with things you've done in the past 6 months, in the past 20 some odd years. There's always someone that you're not going to please. Because I know you personally, I know you've had people out in front of your house on a public street that are banging the drums in the morning to try and just, be asses. And I said it. I know that you had people that were concerned, I don't know what happened with all this other stuff. I can tell you that if I was in the same position, I'd probably do the same thing, and they've said that you didn't do anything wrong. So we'll just leave it at that. But what bothers me is that when people get past the individual and go towards, if you could do everything in your power, you would do anything you could for the state of North Carolina, and I believe that. I also believe that you'd do as much as you could for Winston-Salem. And so when you have people that disagree with you, and you know me as a people pleaser like I am, that'd crush me, even though I've served as elected official, that'd crush me. How do you deal with that?
Well, listen, there's only one person that goes to bed at night and sleeps with how they vote. That's me.
Right.
So I've got to feel comfortable when I do it. If not, this job would be miserable. And that means I have to feel that I've gone through as much education as I possibly can to make the right decision. I've, been presented some things I never planned on doing when I was in Washington. I have now presided over 75% of the impeachments in the history of the United States. I'm the only member of Congress that has ever voted to impeach a president and voted to convict a president. These are not historical markers I set out to do, but I was presented because of the job with the decision, and I had to make it based upon what I saw and how I analyzed the facts. So, there are many things that will go down that I didn't intend to do when I got there that I ended up having to do because we don't have the luxury of being able to say, well, we're only going to take this up and this up. We've dealt for the past 2 weeks now with the decisions in Afghanistan. Now, there's nobody in Washington that didn't clearly know exactly where I was. I wanted to keep Bagram open. I wanted to keep troops there until we had gotten Americans and Afghans out, and then we could make a decision as to how we draw down. That's not the decision that was made. And I could say, okay, I'm not going to participate because you've done something that I don't like.
I'm taking my toys and going home.
I've spent tireless hours, and my staff is trying to get Afghans out, trying to get Americans out. I was on the phone yesterday morning with the right hand of Dr. Abdullah, who was the co-president with Ghani and Afghanistan, getting the latest ground truth on the ground, trying to make decisions on what type of resolutions and what type of investigations might go into exactly what happened.
Right.
And so, here's a time where we're on break, where I'm putting 6 hours, 8 hours a day into Afghanistan because the events happened.
Right.
And, you've got to deal with that as a member of Congress.
So, and in your position now, so, obviously you ran for Senate, I got 2004, and so you've been there a couple years.
Yeah.
Can I say the title of the book? Was it your wife that said this?
I think it
Should we give her credit for it?
Yeah, give her credit.
So the title of your book, if you ever wrote one, is "You're Not Going to Believe This Shit."
Yeah.
You have served under how many presidents now?
5. 5
presidents. You've met all of them. You have had better relationships with some than others.
Yes.
You have been on the Senate Intelligence Committee how long now?
On the Senate Intelligence Committee, 14 years. On the House Intelligence, 8 years.
Okay.
There are only 2 members, 3 members. They're all on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Ron Wyden from Oregon, Dianne Feinstein from California,
Right.
and I are the only 3 members that served on the Intelligence Committee on 9/11.
Okay.
And this is a great point, John. Institutional knowledge is important.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you can't have generational change in Congress, but there are values. There's a value to having a John Dingell there for 40-some years.
Right.
A Ted Kennedy there for 30-some years. And there is a value to having people still on the Intelligence Committee that actually remember 9/11, what we did, why we did it, more importantly, so that we know exactly how to do it next time.
Because if you don't remember your history, it'll repeat itself.
Yeah.
So I was really fortunate in being in Chicago a few weeks ago, and we were addressed by the president of the Realtors Association when Mr. Mendenhall, who was president when 9/11 happened. And he said, we're getting money to the first responders. If they can't pay their, if they got medical bills, whatever, if they can't pay it, we're going to do that. And what was great is we, there was money out there, but it had to be circumvented or whatever. We just said, all right, who do we write the check to? And so he was talking about that. I mean, that's just the Realtors Association. To be as weird as this is, Saturday Night Live reference here. Colin Jost, who's the one that married Scarlett Johansson. I read his book. It's a great book, very punchable face. His mom was the chief medical officer for the New York City Fire Department, and went into the city when this all happened, and ended up getting pushed against a wall. Some stuff fell down. She walks over to her car, and the firefighter with her goes, "What are you doing?" She goes, "I am not dying in heels." Puts on, and she sends some people out and save their lives. And then more, she is the one who went and told Pete Davidson, who's also on that show's family, that he had passed away. And to hear him tell this story about his mom and how that affected her, to be in where you were, where, it's raw data. We've got the president was reading to some kids, and comes in and someone whispers in his ear, and the next thing you know, what is that like? And my fear is we're coming up on 20 years. In fact, this episode will probably air right after this, because we're recording now, but you'll be broadcast 2 weeks from today. So do you have fears about 9/11 happening again, or how, and what can you say, obviously?
Well, that's one of the reasons we were in Afghanistan for as long as we were.
Right.
It was not used as a platform to create terrorists who were committed to attack the United States. And I think the proof is in the fact that we've done so well. Whether that continues, now that we're out of Afghanistan, my fear is that Al-Qaeda will recreate itself. ISIS is already there. The Taliban are a terrorist organization. It's just we haven't listed them, and that's one of the things that Lindsey Graham and I are going to try to do next week when we get back, is list the Taliban as a terrorist organization at the State Department. I think 9/11 changed a lot of people's lives in this country, but 9/11 had a much bigger impact. I think 12 of the 13 service members that were killed in Afghanistan in Kabul weren't alive for 9/11. But they were serving because of 9/11, because of terrorism, because of the threat. And that's the wonderful thing about our service personnel. They don't ever ask why, they do it. And we've seen that now with first responders and medical with COVID. For the most part, they show up, they work 18 hours a day, they're exposed to people who you and I are going to stay away from, and they go to work every day knowing that they're going to be right next to them. We begin to see glimpses again of the greatness of the American people, not in the title that they've got or how much money they make, but in their willingness to help their neighbors. And unfortunately, we just get glimpses of it. We've got to return to that as the norm versus the exception. And that requires a buy-in by the entire society. I can remember growing up in this town, I couldn't get away with anything. If I did something at the movie theater, then My dad knew about it before I got home because somebody picked up the phone and called him.
Yep.
We're not as concerned with our neighbors' children as we are our own children today.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to return to that.
It is, that is a true story. Yeah. Walk in, what'd you do? What are you talking about? They already called.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
And listen, I'll make a lot of enemies on your show for saying this. Social media has contributed to where we are.
Right.
And social media, I understand, it is a great tool. People use it all the time. It is also a dangerous tool. Mm-hmm. And if not used in a way that checks facts and used in a way that is positive and not negative, it can be a very damaging thing.
Yeah, I could not imagine being in your position and having social media out there because, I mean, as soon as you, I mean, obviously you probably don't go read it, but I'm hoping that it's filtered before it gets to you sometimes, you know, because I think some people have way too much time on their hands you know, to give their opinions and things like that. Like I said, I mean, I want you on the show because I think you're, you know, a great guy. We're friends, and you, you know, have been very kind to me, and you know, very kind of. So, I mean, I always think about like Maddie Cashin. I mean, you know, both you and Ted said, hey, you know, this is a young lady that deserves to be in the Naval Academy, and you've done that for many other people. And you know, I asked you a question about something, and you were getting ready to go do something real important, and you're like, hold on one second, let me call and check on that. And you checked with your staff to see if a friend of mine could have their you know, work a way that they could get their family into the country, you know, if that was available. And of course, that country can't travel here, but you still were kind enough to ask. So, you know, and the story with Stabler's family. I mean, you know, they think the world of you because you took his brother down and he presented to you the, you know, the study that he had done about this area, and you were so kind to do that. So, that's the part that I know. The part that, you know, troubles me is when people are upset about, you know, one thing here, one thing there, and, you know, there's a body of work over here. There's a body of work that has given jobs to this community. There's a body of work that has, you know, made people aware of this community. There's a body of work that, you know, this place is better for having you as a senator for our state. And I mean, I truly believe that, and I probably am going to get some stuff about it. No, the biggest thing you could say is what you said on the phone with the realtors about if you're not vaccinated. That one, yeah, that one went over real well. I got a phone call after that, after it's like...
My wife begged me not to say something
as
like
soon as
that.
you said it, and then, how well do you know him? Why? I just don't approve of that comment. So, but you have a...
And listen, let me, because we've talked about COVID, let me just say this. The COVID vaccine has been... There's more data on it than most of the pills every American takes every morning because of how many people have been vaccinated. And the FDA didn't skip any steps. I wrote the legislation that allows them to expedite it the way they did, but everything to meet the gold standard the FDA had set up was met. The amount of data that they went through was unbelievable. And I think that people have used on social media, well, you know, it's not effective. Well, when you've got a 90% effective vaccine, that means 10% of the people may not immunize them.
Right.
Well, today that's a 17, almost 18 million people. That 10%, because of how many people have been vaccinated. Here's the claim that I have a hard time understanding. Vaccinated individuals are unlikely to be hospitalized, and very few will die. If there's not a motivation to take a vaccine in that, I don't know what is. But I still believe that it should be a person's choice. And though, as I've expressed to you, I strongly don't understand why people don't do it.
Yeah.
Very
political today. I like this. Yeah.
I get the fact that they may be looking out for themselves and not necessarily for their family or their community that they live in. Because if we can close that gap, we're not going to have this stick around for 4 years or 6 years or longer.
Well, when I had Dr. Ohl on the show, he said, look, if we can get it's going to go through the schools, and we got to get in front of that before it starts going through the schools. We got to get those kids vaccinated. And you know my situation. I mean, my dad's been vaccinated, and I'm 9, and he's 97. So, I mean, I've got to be careful there. But then I also have a 7-year-old who can't get vaccinated yet. So, but, all right, we got one more segment left. We're going to come back and finish up with Senator Richard Burr. We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson, and I'm here with the Honorable Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina, who is retiring.
Yes.
And you think that, well, I got a couple questions. One is, I love politics. We've talked about that. My mom actually with a Brownie camera, took a picture of Truman in El Dorado, Illinois, if you can believe that. And so what is it like? Because, I love the story of how Truman was down, and was he in Sam Rayburn's office having a drink when they called him when Roosevelt died? Didn't even tell him what it was. He walks through the...
I don't know where he was, but he was having a drink.
Yeah, he was suppose he was in Rayburn's office. He walks through the rotunda, waving at people and all that kind of stuff. He's the President of the United States and doesn't even know it. With very high position to be in the Senate Intelligence. So there's the President, the Vice President, and then you for a while, correct?
Well, from a standpoint of who's privy to the intelligence information, yes. Mm-hmm. And scattered in there is the Secretary of the Defense, maybe the Secretary of State on some things. Intelligence, who has access to it is really an executive branch decision. Now, the intelligence committees, both House and Senate, they're select committees. They were added.
Right.
And they could be taken away at any point. In both the House and the Senate, the members are chosen by the leadership and not by seniority, which for the Senate is very unusual not to have a seniority-driven system. And it really requires you to put together an assembly of folks who, in the Senate, have the trust of 85 other members because they're not privy to the same information. But you've got to instill in them that we've sufficiently done our job, and just because you don't look at it, you can feel confident that we've done that. That's the tough part. And when you see the politics that sort of entered the House Intelligence Committee over the past 3 years, you can understand why you've got more and more members who are saying, I've got to have access to intelligence. When I chaired the committee, any member could come and read anything that was not compartmentalized, meaning there was very limited folks that could read it. If it was general intelligence, if they were a member of the United States Senate, I would bring them into the SCIF and let them read it. Right. Because I saw that as advantageous for them and the decision they had in front of them.
Well, they know you're doing your job then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so what's it like to be called into the president's office? That's got to be cool. Because I know you're like me, you're a historian and like all these things, but...
Well, the first thing I try to do is make sure I walk out with presidential cufflinks.
Right.
That's the number one objective. But listen, when the president calls, regardless of which party they're in, right. This is the head of our country. Right. And you show them the respect that they deserve. Mm-hmm. I remember getting the call January 2012 after 9/11. Mm-hmm. And President Bush said, I want you and Saxby Chambliss to go to the Middle East and deliver a message. Mm-hmm. And the president directed us to go to Egypt and meet with Mubarak, to go to Jordan and meet with King Abdullah, to go to Syria and meet with Bashar Assad, and then back to Israel to meet with the leadership there to deliver the president's message about what he was going to do, mm-hmm. and that they better be with us. And I remember being in the King David Hotel the night before we were coming home, and the White House called, and I think it was a national security advisor said, the president would like you to go meet with Yasser Arafat tomorrow morning before you leave.
Okay.
And we thought, well, that's out of the ordinary, but we'll put this together. But we spent 2 hours negotiating with Arafat's folks. And oddly enough, what was this all over? It was over whether there were going to be TV cameras or reporters.
Mm-hmm.
We insisted that if we came, there were going to be no TV cameras and no reporters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that may seem unusual for a member of Congress. They're always interested in getting press.
Right.
Not when you're on a mission for the president.
And that is the one thing that I know about you and have learned is the press thing. For instance, a lot of people don't know you're one of 7 that voted to impeach Trump.
I can't remember the exact number. It may have been 10.
But the big thing that I think that people, where I could see you getting some heat on it, but your reasoning was different, was when you didn't want to do investigation into the attack on the Capitol, and your comment was, we just need to move on from this. It's not that I don't think it was wrong or things like that, and but let our other people investigate that rather than have it all drawn out in front of the in front of the country. You had voted, you did not want to do that, and I remember you just said to me, so yeah, why do we need to bring that up again? I mean, it's
the committee's a jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Should carry out the investigation. They have. They've released it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Now what we've got is because there wasn't a commission, now we've got a House committee that's been established, a select committee. And what was going to be a 3-month investigation, now they're talking about going well past next year's election. This is becoming more political.
Mm-hmm.
We've got enough politics in this country. We need to give up the politics and start focusing on the policy.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you if you have a favorite president, but I don't know if I should ask that. I might skip on that. You might bite your tongue on that one. So let's do this. You are 14 months, we think, plus or minus, away from retirement.
Yeah.
What made you decide to retire?
Probably the number one thing is I owed my wife to come home.
Okay.
And
she likes you.
She does.
Yeah.
And I think COVID proved that we can live together and not kill each other. But she's done this for 28 years.
Right.
And it's time for me to come home, do something different. Have no idea what that's going to be, but I look forward to it. And to be able to actually take a vacation and know that I can go for a longer period of time than 7 days is sort of exciting.
Well, now with someone with your clearance at this point, I'm assuming that, you'll still have some responsibilities, but that's up to...
The day I walk out of the Senate chamber as a retired member, I lose all my security clearances.
Okay.
If I ever do anything that requires a clearance, even if I serve on an advisory board for the CIA or for the National Security Agency, I will have to go back through the security process and be cleared.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I want to ask this question because we've talked about sports here, because I know what the answer is going to be ahead of time. What are you doing after retirement? What you got planned? What is it? What do they call it in the NBA? It's not
free agency.
Yeah, you're not a free agent yet, so you can't talk to anyone.
No, I can't. I can't engage with anybody until after the November election next year, or it's an ethics violation.
Okay.
So I watch that very carefully.
Right. Yeah. So I know. I mean, you like to travel up towards family up north. You occasionally probably like to go to the beach like the rest of us, and then you like to piddle around the house.
Yeah.
Your truck's a little bit bigger than mine, and I've already gotten comments about that when you pulled in. That, oh, his truck's nicer than yours. So, but we kid about that. But I mean, you kind of like to hang out.
I do, and to be able to get back to something that is more comfortable for me is something that I desperately look forward to.
All right, so we got like a couple questions. I have to ask this one because I'd be remiss if I didn't say this name at least once in this podcast. You have had a really good relationship, and then as soon as I say it, you're going to probably bust out laughing. You've had a really good relationship with the Realtors Association.
Yeah.
Lou has been with you a long time.
Yeah.
So Lou Baldwin, first guest on Camel City Chat. He likes to claim that he's got the most views. I think he might watch him occasionally or whatever. He's just a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
How has that relationship been? Because I know, Lou's won an award, I think, from our association for being a very good representative of the realtors and dealing with you and stuff like that. How has that, so on the state level, I work with Jeff Zinger and I work with Paul Lowe, and but on the national level, like Brooke Cashin works with Ted Budd, and Lou's worked with you. I mean, has he been with you since Congress?
As long as I can remember.
Right.
But Lou had an easy job.
Right.
I mean, I slept with a realtor.
Right. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. So he had a cakewalk there. Then is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, has that helped you? Do you think having the the person from the realtors specifically assigned to help you out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gives you somebody that, when faced with an issue that may affect realtors or
Right.
may affect real estate, it's important to get 360 degrees of views on it. And
Right.
to be able to pick up the phone and call Lou or have somebody call Lou and hear from somebody who should know
Right.
is absolutely essential.
Cool. What guides you? Because we talked earlier about that. I can lay down at night and basically I voted that way, and if I'm the one that has to deal with it. But what guides you to get to be so passionate about things, and how do you get to these places?
Well, my staff probably should answer this because they know the process.
Right.
They've got to show me the human face behind an issue for me to get engaged. So if it's a piece of healthcare legislation, then they've got to show me that patient it impacts.
Right.
I've got to be able to connect with it to where I see that American out there that is going to fall through the cracks if I don't do whatever I need to do to get it done. Probably the most recent thing that really is an example of that is the establishment of ABLE Act.
Okay.
For individuals who have mental and physical disabilities. They're relying on Medicaid for their health care up to 65, and then Medicare shares in part of that. But if they earn a salary, all of a sudden their benefits are at risk. If a grandparent tries to set up a fund for a grandchild that has a disability so that they know that that grandchild is taken care of even when their parents are gone, all of a sudden it might mess up their disability. So we changed the law to create an avenue where they could earn a salary. Grandparents and parents could establish a savings account for them without impacting the benefit package.
That's wonderful.
And that's now 2 years old in North Carolina. It's maybe 4 years ago when we did it. More and more states are taking it on. The Secretary of Treasury here, Dale Folwell, he's been driving this at the state level. And this is just it makes so much common sense. You would wonder, well, why did it take so damn long?
Right.
Because it took
But a lot of them are like that too, isn't it?
It took that long for somebody to present me the human face behind it.
Right.
And it was one of those things that ended up taking 4 years to succeed. Now, 4 years, every 2 years, when new Congress comes in, all the legislation goes away. You have to reintroduce everything. So you've really got to be committed on these things if you want to get them into law.
So we got just a couple minutes. I want to ask you a question. We talked about Winston-Salem and where we were going and stuff, I think, earlier. So let's just ask this one. What do you want to be remembered for? And that is 14 months from now to whenever. I mean, but what do you want to be remembered for?
That I was fair with everybody that I interacted with.
I think that's true.
Nobody's going to agree with me 100% of the time, not even my wife. But if I'm fair, if people leave and say, I didn't get what I wanted, but he listened. I didn't get the benefit that I thought I deserved, but they worked on it. They were fair about it. That's all I can ask.
You think you're going to miss it?
I think I will. I don't know how you can leave a job like that and not look back and say, gosh, it was different when I was actually a member. But I still will have access to the Capitol and the Senate chamber, just like I do the House chamber today. And that's something I hope I can expose my grandchildren to.
Your wife still gets more phone calls than you being a realtor?
She does. And
Just making sure.
More because she shares her telephone number with everybody, and I try not to do it very much.
You made a mistake and gave me your number. You realize that. So, but no, I really appreciate you being here, and I thank you very much. It means a lot to me that you take the time to do this. I thank you for what you've done for our state, for what you've done for the city.
Well, let me just say this, John, in conclusion. I've never been more optimistic about North Carolina. And quite frankly, I've never been more optimistic about the United States of America, because we're an innovative state, we're an innovative country, and we're headed for a period of innovation that change is going to happen faster than we've ever dreamed.
Right.
The shelf life of technology today is about 18 months, meaning what we buy and utilize today is obsolete in 18 months. Right. It's going to be North Carolinians that are creating the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And when you look at where our strength is in this state and in this city, it plays right into that future, meaning North Carolina is going to be driving the future in this country and in the world.
I like that. Thank you for saying that. I'm hoping that's true. I have loved being able to be a resident of this state, this town, and I think you have too. Mm-hmm. It's nice to hear someone in your position feel that we're going in the right direction. And I just can't thank you enough for being here.
Delighted to be here.
Yeah,
thanks.
I just hope that we continue down these paths that you talk about, because we need it now more than ever.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for watching the show. We appreciate Senator Burr being here with us, and we'll be back next week with more Camel City Chat.